Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to another live stream of the Grossman Files. Hey, we got a great one for you today. Welcome, everyone. So, starting in a few days, shit really hits the fan for me in terms of busyness. So these last few blessed days where I don't have much going on, I'm taking advantage of it by doing yet another live stream. So I actually love these YouTube live streams. Welcome everybody. Let's interact in the chat. New people, let's hear from you. We're gonna well, what are we doing today? Well, we're asking the question, is Berkie Bi? And no, all y'all spiritually sick people out there, we're not talking about gender, binary gender, whatever that means. We're talking about Berkie's actions, truth-telling, lying, his MOs and attacks, and whether or not he was singular or binary, meaning did he only do things one way or did he do things a myriad of ways? Does he always tell the truth or does he mix truth in with lies? And in other words, is he binary or singular? And my argument, of course, is that he's binary, just like most of us out there in terms of these things. I mean, again, we're not, for all the spiritually sick, I have no interest in Berkowitz's sexuality. It's actually quite sick if you read his Abrahamson letters. The things he talked about in there. And we're certainly not talking about the weird Dodge Foundation notions by the Rhea family, Howard Hunt Howell's wife, talking about gender is a social construct. Whatever the hell that means. So, no, we're talking about the binary nature of David Berkowitz, just like most of us when it comes to truth-telling, the way we do things in life, etc., etc. And why am I doing this discussion? As we say hello to the 37 people on such short notice. What's up, Bernard? Well, because I don't have very smart critics. I wish I did. It's actually hilarious watching them. They think that somehow they're owning me with their critiques and criticisms and reaction videos that they do. I love every one of them. They go on a little long. These people have no sense of professional production skills. I will say they go on rather long. But it's great watching the cope, but it's especially great watching the dumb arguments that people make in there, because these people think Berkowitz is binary. It's either one or the other, or singular, I should say. They think that Berkowitz is singular, that he could only do things one way in the commission of his crimes, that his crimes are only done in one capacity, that if he smiled in one shooting, that means he could never smile. That means he always smiled or he never smiled. For instance, these troglodytic mouth breathers, when discussing Wendy Savino, they say, he never smiled in his commission of his crimes. Wendy said that his shooter was a smile. There's no record of Berkowitz smiling. Well, dummies. First of all, quite a few of the victims were killed, so you never know what he was doing. People like Carl Denaro were too busy sniffing perfume at the moment, so he didn't see what Berkowitz was doing. How do you know he didn't smile at his other attacks? Tell me that. And even if he didn't smile, let's just say that, let's play devil's advocate and say that these people are correct in their assessments. And he never smiled at an attack. That doesn't mean he didn't smile at Wendy, you nudnicks, you low-level thinkers. It's possible to do one thing at a criminal scene and do another thing at another. I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but I like discussing these meta issues around Son of Sam because the crimes themselves, the issues around the Carr family, the Neto family, I mean, that's been done to death. Listening to the tapes that these people are starting to do 3 years after I analyzed all the same ones, and they think that they are doing it first. I mean, I don't care. Let them think they're doing it first. It's fine with me. And I can't wait to see the reaction video to this one. These issues have been talked to death. Now, I like to talk about the meta issues surrounding Berkowitz, the more philosophical issues surrounding the crimes. And one of them, of course, is the fact that Berkowitz, as we should all understand, anyone who's well versed in these crimes, he changed it up. Yeah, there were a few threads that went through most of his shootings. Wendy Savino, to Donna Loria, then to Denaro. I know I'm skipping one, but I'm doing that for a reason. Then to Freund, then to Placido Lupo, and then to Moskowitz Violante. He shot at in a parked car through a window at either males and females or females alone. So if the theory of the troglodytic mouth breathers who say that he did everything in one way, well, how do you explain Boskorichian, where he shot someone with a single bullet on the sidewalk from 1 foot away? There was no car involved. Not only did that change MO completely in terms of the car and the lover's lane, but he also changed the number of shots. He only did 1 shot as opposed to 4 or 5. But wait, I thought Berkowitz could only do things one way. Well, you already see that he does things in different ways. What about Lomino Damasi? Where he goes up to these people and he starts asking for directions. And then he pulls out a gun and shoots these 2 poor teenage girls on a stoop. I thought he only shot people in a car. Wait, Berkowitz only did something one way. How's it possible that Lomino and oh, I know, John Carr did it. It was ridiculous. But I think you understand my point. We're talking about the meta issue of Berkowitz was binary. He did things in different ways. He wasn't a singular shooter with one specific MO. Yeah, there were certain threads, shooting random strangers in generally good neighborhoods. Even the whole notion that he only shot young people is ridiculous. Wendy was 39. He wanted to shoot Cecilia Davis, but it wasn't the right time. He talked about wanting to shoot her. She was in her 50s. And the victims ranged in age from 16, 17, 18, all the way up to, well, in Wendy's case, 39. But let's say you don't believe Wendy. Christine Freund, 29. Do you think that he was sitting there with birth certificate records, making sure that everybody was within the same age range? The answer to that, of course, is no, as we walk through the beautiful Bronx-Yonkers border of Bayport Park on this typically nippy yet very invigorating fall day on November 6th, 2025. So someone says, hello, semen breath, and wish he got you. Well, I would have been 4 years old. So if that happened, my current haters would be really apoplectic, because that would have gone totally against the way they think he did things. So I would like to talk about these bigger issues, these larger issues of people speaking for Berkowitz's motivation as if he only did things in one way. He never smiled. How do you know? Cecilia Davis reported him smiling. The smile was written about in the, as I did many shows on, was written about extensively after his arrest, and then people went back to his childhood and talked about his crazy smile. And then, of course, John Rinciari not only talked about his smile, but about his giggle when they met at that diner, which was the last time he ever saw him after the army. So there you have a smile and a laugh. Oh, what did Wendy say about her shooter? He smiled and he laughed. So let's again bring this back to Wendy. And again, as I walk up this hill and take a little breath. I don't know how many times I could say it before it penetrates. And I'm not trying to convince you that Wendy was shot by Berkowitz. If you think that she wasn't, that's fine. I think he was. I think he did. So does NYPD and the Bronx DA. So does Mike Lorenzo, an extremely high-end first-grade detective with Yonkers. So does John Geis, who emailed me after Wendy saying congratulations. He wouldn't have done that if he didn't think that we were onto something. He was the famous cold case detective from Yonkers who allegedly hates my guts. But the guy who hates my guts sent me a congratulatory email right after Wendy saying, hey, good work. So, again, if you don't believe it, that's fine. I have yet to hear one cogent argument against it. And again, the arguments against Wendy being David being the shooter and Wendy all go back to this issue of binary versus singularity. I'm a binarist in Son of Sam. I believe that Berkowitz does things differently at different crime scenes, as is backed up by the evidence. The singularists, the mouth-breathing troglodytic moral reprobates and excretins, who will no doubt do a reaction video to this. I can't wait to watch it. Just shorten it a little next time, guys. No one can sit for 3.5 hours listening to psychotic rants. So they're singularists. They think that because Berkowitz did something at one shooting that he had to do it at every other. He never ran away. How do you know that? Just because he said he walked away at some shootings doesn't mean that he didn't run away. And I know he said, I never ran from the scene of the shootings. That could be a lie. And he didn't even run away from Wendy. She said she heard him walking away. It wasn't a run. So, and oh, at the Wendy shooting, he shot 3 times and waited and then shot twice. And as if Berkowitz isn't allowed to do that. Let's just say that that was his first shooting. That would actually make sense. Tentative shots, trying to make sure that he wasn't sure at the beginning if he got her, then adding 2 more to make sure. But the things that she said, of course, were that he was smiling, that he laughed, and that he paused and shot 2 more times and walked away. And of course, we know he used a 32. Oh, it can't be him because it was a 32. Again, that's singularist thinking, Son of Sam. It's not mature. It's not intelligent. Just because he used the 44 after he went to Texas and saw a taxi driver and got influenced by a character named Travis Bickle doesn't mean that he didn't use a 32 before he left. You can't use that as an argument. You may not believe that he did the shooting, that's fine. But you can't use that as an argument, is what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to have a rational discussion with idiots. I don't even know what I'm doing. God, why am I doing this? Why am I sitting here trying to tell people logical truths and trying to be logical with people who just don't understand logic and are not intelligent enough to inculcate new information, mainly because it comes from me. Because that's the only motivation behind the Wendy haters. They hate me, therefore they don't believe Wendy. Guaranteed, if they found Wendy, they'd be crowing it way more than I ever did. And that's a fact, Jack. So Berkowitz could have used a 32. Where did he get it? Doesn't freaking matter. If you believe Berkowitz did it, then the shooter used a 32, that means he had a 32. It doesn't matter where he got it. Oh, he couldn't have gotten it. Yes, he could have. Again, that's the singularist thinking. Just because he bought a 44 in Texas doesn't mean he couldn't have bought a 32 off the street. And don't you remember that he was writing letters to his friends talking about all the pistols he could buy in Louisiana at I think it was Fort Polk in Louisiana when he was in the Army, basic training. He wrote a letter, it was in the New York Post or the Daily News. We showed it during our video with Wendy. Lorenzo discovered it, crowing about all the pistols he could buy, and you didn't need a background check. How do you know he didn't have a pistol from there? Again, I'm not saying where he got it from because it doesn't matter. I believe he did, Wendy, so therefore where he got the 32 is irrelevant to me. He could have gotten a 32, that's all that matters. It wasn't outside of the realm of possibility, like the singularists would have you believe. And he could have used different weapons in his commutation of the Son of Sam crimes. In fact, I'm not even a singularist in Son of Sam. I include every crime. I include the Foreman attacks. I include the Savino attacks. I believe he was the Bronx sniper. I include those attacks. I include the Wicker Street attacks. So let's see the weapons he used in Son of Sam, because I include all of that within the collectivity of Son of Sam. Knives, 32, Molotov cocktails, 44, 22 rifle, 45 rifle, machine gun type rifle. He also used the weapons of terror, like sending letters to people, making calls, sending SWAT teams. I have an amazing confirmation of the Netto SWAT incident, by the way. I'm not going to show it because it's in documents that if I show, I'll be in trouble. But I have a document where he talks about swatting the Nettos, so it confirms that story. He says that he called the cops on them. He didn't even call the cops on them. He called the cops on Joaquin Goncarlo, who really was the person who he was after in that house. And he said he watched in the woods as the cops stormed the house. Very, very interesting passage. Just like the peekaboo thing, which I can't show, unfortunately. But that also completely lays waste to the theory that he didn't play games with his victims. Like he did with Wendy, where he came up to the car, looked like he was going to ask directions. Ooh, a hawk. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Right there. Let's see if we can get up closer. Doubt you'll be able to even make it out. Let's see. There's a huge hawk, and I think it just grabbed the entrails of a squirrel. It's eating something. It's having a good old time eating. That's a beautiful, beautiful creature. So, what's up, Victoria and Brian? How are you? Ari loves you. What's going on? So a lot of new names here. It's great. I got a ton of new subscribers because of the Ace Frehley videos. which is nice because maybe some of those people will be interested in Son of Sam. I would imagine that some of them would be because Kiss was a New York band, came out in the 70s. So it might pique some new interest for some new heads into Son of Sam Truth, the only station and channel that matters in terms of this. Because the other stations are still talking about John Carr being possibly or not involved and having debates with people about was John Carr involved. They're still paying attention to the idiots, whereas we are moving on and we're talking about logic and meta topics in Son of Sam. And again, the binary nature of Berkowitz is what we're talking about today. He didn't do anything in one particular way. He had different weapons, his basic MO was the same, but he had different weapons. He did different things at different crime scenes because the scenes themselves lent to his actions. In a scene like Loria, it would make sense to run away because he was in a fishbowl. He was right there by a huge apartment building and across from residences. In a scene like Nina's, he was in a parking lot, dark parking lot with nobody around. He didn't have to run. In a scene like Voskerichian, he jogged away because he ran away because Barlow saw him do that. In a scene like Denaro, we simply have no clue what he did. Just because he said he ran away from every scene doesn't mean he's telling you the truth. And again, that also speaks to the binary nature of Berkowitz, that these people use the argument that he didn't shoot Wendy. They go, he told the truth to the cops about every crime, including the stabbings, but he didn't tell them about Wendy, therefore he didn't do Wendy. Where's the logic behind that? So they say that he told the truth about everything, and he said that he didn't shoot Wendy, so he's telling the truth. That's singularist thinking in Son of Sam. It's not useful to the argument because we already know that he's lied to some people and told the truth to others. So therefore, Berkowitz is an opportunist truth teller. Oh, but he only told the truth to the cops. How do you know that? He didn't tell them about Peekaboo at the Donna Loria shooting. So therefore, we already know he left something out. Jody Valenti herself testified to that, okay? That came from her mouth. I got that from the highest sources possible within law enforcement. Oh, Manny doesn't have any contacts. The hell I don't. All right. So, he's already left things out. He changed his story to Maury Terry, therefore he lied about things. He said that he didn't do any of the shootings except for the Bronx shootings, so he lied about that. But he's a singularist, as these people want to think, that he tells the truth all the time. Berkowitz lies in some capacities and tells the truth in others, and he mixes both at the same time. With Wendy, he's lying because the evidence points to him being the shooter. Unless you can tell me who the identical twin shooter was who used the same MO in the same time period, in the same location, right during the period where he was having a mental breakdown about the dogs at Cassara. Doesn't matter that it wasn't the day after, and I think he was, because his letters in the apartment, and I'll use those letters in the apartment as an example, he would go crazy about dogs, and sometimes the shooting would be a week later, as in the case of Valentina Suriani. He wrote a letter on April 10th, and she was killed a week later. So the fact that he storms out angrily of Cassara on the Sunday before the shooting of Wendy, and then the day before the shooting of Wendy, he comes back and gets his stuff. Cassara herself said he didn't talk. He was in a bad mood. He was brooding. He wouldn't say a word to anybody. That shows and indicates he was still in a snit about the whole situation. And then, of course, the next day, when he either had someplace to go or didn't, I believe he didn't, Berkowitz couldn't remember in his interrogation. He says he thinks he stayed in his car in Orchard Beach. He said that. The cops didn't say that. He said that. Berkowitz could not remember going directly from Kisara to Pine Street. So I theorize that he was just getting angrier and angrier. And it came to a head on April 9th when he shot Wendy. Just makes logical sense. So unless you could tell me who the identical twin to Berkowitz was, as is evidenced by her sketch, which everybody agrees looks exactly like Berkowitz. Maybe not the fine details like the widow's peak, but those are just little stupid things that don't mean anything. The tan, I actually want to confirm something, and maybe those of you who are heads, because I don't have the documents in front of me, they're on a hard drive, that because my computer's on a boat in the Atlantic Ocean, I couldn't get to these files. But I seem to remember, and I could be wrong. Again, I want to preface this by saying I could be wrong, so don't take this as evidence. But that Sam Carr said the shooter of Harvey, when he saw him, was tanned. And that took place in April, just like the shooting of Wendy. Berkowitz was an outdoorsman. By April, when I garden, I'm already tanned because I'm out in March all day long, and the sun can tan you. So even the tan is up for grabs. But as New Coke says, sketches aren't pictures. And the sketch was close enough that even Berkowitz said the resemblance was uncanny. That's what he said. I didn't say that. Berkowitz said that at his interrogation. You can be angry about that, but even if you disagree that the sketch looks like Berkowitz, Berkey thinks that it looks like him. So much so that the word he said was uncanny resemblance. He also said that if he was on a jury, he would find himself guilty of the crime. So he said those things, not me. Let's see what the people are saying. He couldn't tell the truth if he tried. I believe he had a few weapons. He was the first voyeur to his own crimes. Cunning predator, always downplayed it too. No name, middle name. Let's see what people are saying. Thanks, Manny. Greetings from UK. What's up, Victoria and Brian, the kitty? Him hiding in the woods when he was swatted speaks volumes. I know people are gonna say I made that up, but it was in his own words and documents that I have. I was blown away when I saw that paragraph, actually, because it confirmed the Netto, what the Nettos had reported. Cunning predator, he couldn't tell the truth. Maury's book gave him the excuses he couldn't think of himself. Exactly. And that again points to the binary nature. Is Berkie Bi? Yeah, Berkie's bi, but not in the spiritually sick way that people think of nowadays. He was binary, just like all of us, and to degrees. We don't always do things the same way. We change things up because we're human beings. So the singularists and Son of Sam have a long hill to climb up, like I'm climbing up now, because their arguments make no sense. Please tell me how it makes sense in criminology that your argument that because he did the Son of Sam with a 44 that he couldn't have used a 32. Please tell me how that makes sense. Like, expand out. Here's a challenge, because I tried getting on these people's show to talk, but I was called a liar, a thief, an apprentice. The dude went absolutely apoplectic when I went in there. I was very calm. It's all on video. You can see it. Those who, I'm not going to give their channel any love, because they already use my name and my material to get their most of their views. So you can find it if you're truly interested. Those of you who are heads of the channel know who I'm talking about. So I went on there to try to discuss things, and I was summarily shouted down, wasn't allowed to speak, so I took myself out of the discussion. And then these people have the temerity to call me a liar. But their arguments make no sense. How does it make sense that he couldn't use a 32? How does it make sense that he couldn't wear a leather jacket? It's another thing. Berkowitz never had a leather jacket. Well, I'm not saying that Comparetto's leather jacket was on him that night. But in defense of my argument that he shot Wendy, at least I found evidence that Berkowitz had a leather jacket because his best friend at the time lent him one, and is on record saying I lent him a leather jacket and I never got it back. You think in 1979 when Comparetto told that to the Queen's DA he was covering for Wendy Savino? Nobody had any idea she even existed until we came around. Except, of course, for the Bronx District Attorney, who in October of 1977 was told specifically by Wendy Savino and Joe Savino that Berkowitz was her shooter, and they did summarily nothing about it. So this singularist thinking in Son of Sam is leading people astray. I mean, I understand that the people making the singularist arguments are just not that bright. They don't have much intelligence. They never listen to what I actually say. They just assume that everything I say is a lie and then act out accordingly, even though I have literally never lied once about anything that I've done. Now they're saying that I didn't have close to 30,000 subscribers on my channel. I mean, there's no way for me to prove that because I deleted the first channel, but I had definitely at least 27 grand subs. They came in, a lot of them, from the Eric Hunley days and the Crowdsource the Truth days. In fact, I had 800 people paying me a month when I was on Subscribestar and Locals, which even Goodman said was unprecedented numbers for someone who just came out. So anyway, I don't need to argue about that. It's just ridiculous to even bother with that. As we walk here over the bridge. Thank you, Victoria. I appreciate, hey, doggy. I appreciate your kind words. I really do. And I don't even know if I know you. Your name sounds unfamiliar to me. So that's cool. I appreciate that. As we sit here in Van Cortlandt Park and walk and talk about binary thinking versus singularist thinking in Son of Sam. And boy, would it be great if people would actually talk about these issues in a mature way, instead of having apoplectic psychotic breakdowns about Manny lying and he lied about this and he lied about that while actually showing no proof of those lies ever. It's really sad because this is an important topic and it's one that I'm bringing up because of it is important. You can't think of the Son of Sam crimes in one singular way. I mean, that issue was put to rest just by looking at the accepted crimes, where every one of them was a tad different. Some were incredibly different, like Virginia Voskerichian. Even Freund and Deal was a crazy reckless because of where it took place. Denaro was not a lover's lane, but it was deserted. Suriani and Esau, the lover's lane and deserted. But Freund and Deal, fishbowl with apartments everywhere, and you could see our videos that I did with John Catalano where we were right there, also showing every spot where Berkowitz could have hidden, whereas Maury Terry said he had no chance of hiding, never thinking that you would actually go to the spot and check it out for yourself. In Moskowitz Violante, he was in a fishbowl. That was really ballsy, because not only was he witness before the shooting and suspected of being a stranger to the neighborhood by Cecilia Davis, but that was Bath Beach, one of the most mobbed up neighborhoods in all of New York City, Sammy the Bull's neighborhood. And he did a shooting on Saturday night in a crowded park. It was almost as if he wanted to get caught, and he got the parking ticket, so there is truth to that. Loria and Valenti, where he played peekaboo right before the shooting by going up and down below the window of the car, doing almost exactly what he did with Wendy, where he was kind of taunting the victim right before the shooting, in the immediate time before the shooting. I believe that the peekaboo was a carryover from Savino, and I think he went on his trip to Texas to get away from the heat of Savino because he was really worried about what he did. So, the first question that Berkowitz asked when confronted with Savino was what caliber of bullet was it? Why would he think to ask that? If he did everything with a 44, why would he think? He should have just assumed that it was with a 44. But he actually asked his friend DeGennaro, what caliber was it? It was almost as if he knew he had just gotten busted and it was a different caliber. So Frank DeGennaro, thank God we haven't seen him. The dude actually smartened up and disappeared himself for confronting and accosting Wendy in a public place where we originally thought that he had been stalking her, because he talked about, I live in South Carolina or North Carolina. And then all of a sudden he ends up in some random library with Wendy Savino. You could understand why she was very nervous about that. And then he's talking about, oh, David didn't do this, terrifying her. So the binarists versus the singularists. I'm a binary thinker and Son of Sam. I can accept that different things can be true and still be, different things could have happened and still be true. Even Berkowitz himself tells the truth to some people and lies to the other. He's still doing it to Caporelli. He's telling him the truth about, and again, this is not a diss on Caporelli. I have a piece with Caporelli. I like Mike Caporelli. I believe that he has done very important work in the Son of Sam space besides me. Probably the most important work in the last 5 years, because he actually got Berkowitz to confess that he worked alone. But it was binary. Berkowitz said, I worked alone, but yet I hung out with Dr. Carlton Gaj Dusek in Untermeyer Park. Yeah, right. So he even played his boy Mike Caporelli in the commission of telling the truth. He told a lie. And again, I only know that he's lying because I know the forensic evidence of the case. I've read every case file, which as a Son of Sam researcher, if you really care about this obscure subject that literally no one on earth gives a shit about really, except for us, you have to read every file. I did that with Book Club Warrior and John Catalano for months. We went through every file. That's how we prepared our now legendary Brooklyn series, Freund series, Voskerichian series. I did Placido and Lupo on my own because at that point I wasn't sharing files with anybody. I'd just been so burnt out by the whole experience. It wasn't anything personal against Book Club or John, but I just didn't want these files getting out into the public. And also they were unredacted when I got them. So I didn't want certain names to go out, particularly of the eyewitness of David Berkowitz, a guy named Glenn, who I've tried to contact many times, but will not get back to me. But I'm never going to give his last name. Good luck to anybody to try to find those files. You'll never get them from me, that's for sure. So anyway, let's see what's going on in the chat. Victorian says, I've been with your channel for a long time. I always thought something was off with Son of Sam. You blew it wide open. Outrageous behavior. He should be banged up with Berkey. Oh, you're talking about Frank DeGennaro, Victoria? Yeah. Well, he learned his lesson. The cops were on him like white on rice, which they should have been, because it was a very provocative act, I say, of terror. He might not think of it that way, but he actually terrorized Wendy Savino. As we look at Vault Hill. So I'll sit down and I'll riff a little bit with you guys. I think I've kind of gotten the point through that you can't think of the Son of Sam crimes as a singularity. in order to truly understand the Son of Sam crimes, you have to accept that certain things are true in some crimes that weren't true in others. And therefore, that makes Wendy Savino not so hard to understand about the .32 and the leather jacket and him pausing while shooting and then waiting a second or two, walking away and then walking back and pumping 2 more bullets into her. It explains, of course, him reporting that he shot an old woman. Now, Wendy wasn't old, but she was 39 at the time. She certainly didn't look like an old woman, but she crawled away. Berkowitz said he shot an old woman with his .45, and that she crawled away. Now, I believe he's talking about Wendy there. And he could be mixing truth and lies in that, just like he mixes truth and lies in with Caporelli, talking about, I did it alone, but yet I hung out with Gaj Dusek and 2 brothers in Untermeyer Park. Are you kidding me? And again, I only don't believe that because I know the evidence of the case. The all-important DD5s from the police files, the NYPD files, which are ultimate, those in Abrahamson and the confession are the most important documents in the entire thing. Everything else that's the center hub, and everything else out is a spoke from that. Because those tell you what actually happened in the commission of the crimes. Those give you all the forensic evidence and details. Those tell you the witness reports, the eyewitnesses, the ancillary witnesses. They explain anomalous things like the yellow Volkswagen. So you have to be a student of the police files, which are all on People versus David Berkowitz. In fact, they're my files that I got from Josh Seaman. Because if you look at the file names, they're the exact ones that he scanned and gave to us, that we got in July or June or July of 2021. I don't remember now. Those are the police files, which I had for years before People versus David Berkowitz. I could never make them public, but whatever. I was shocked to see those files on People versus David Berkowitz. I would like the truth to come out about that website, who was behind it. I have my suspicions, but I won't say them here. And of course, my Maury Terry files that I gave to Neo and Eric Galati all ended up on those, albeit edited. In terms of like they cropped certain things to make it look better, and also they didn't include the Vinny and Danny letters, which still aren't public, but which I have, which I did shows on. That's not on People versus David Berkowitz, but and I'm not sure about the Gilroy. I think Gilroy's on there, which is also extremely important. The Gilroy document. I was going to do a show on the Gilroy thing about 2 years ago when I analyzed them, because, again, they proved Maury Terry to be a total selective editor and liar. And I realized that 2 years ago, but I was so burnt out, and I was like, this is going to be a boring show to go through everything where Maury totally mischaracterized what Berkowitz said. Let's see what he says. So, Victoria and Brian the Kitty, do you think he has more victims? And if so, how many? The answer to that is yes. I believe that Berkowitz has more victims. There's an interesting case of a woman who was shot with a .44 during the Son of Sam spree in Midtown Manhattan. And she lived. She was shot in the face with a .44. But they never connected that with Berkowitz. And there's only one article about it on the internet. In the newspaper archives. Sometimes I wonder about that, but again, no proof like I have in Wendy. Yeah, even though Wendy's circumstantial, it just makes sense. And then you have Berkowitz's interrogation in 2024, where he said, "I would find myself guilty. The sketch is uncanny. It looks like me." He goes, "I know this looks bad, but I didn't do it." Yeah, he also said he didn't do Denaro. He said he didn't do Freund. He said he didn't do Lupo, Placido. He didn't do Lomino Damasi. He didn't do Violante and Moskowitz. He said he didn't do those either. So you're going to believe him in a singularist thinking? Not you, Victoria, but you, I'm talking about the singularists. You're going to believe him that he didn't do Wendy Savino? again, you got to realize that Berkowitz is bi. He's not singular. He doesn't do things in one way. I don't know why I have to constantly explain this. It's still not going to get through because, I'm the liar, right, to these people. Nothing I say is ever true. That's their whole reason for existence, and they're getting actually no mileage out of it whatsoever. These people have 60 subscribers, and they're getting their biggest videos are the ones that use me in it. And even those are only getting like 200 views. I get more than that in the first hour of my videos because people know who the real deal is versus the troglodytic, mouth-breathing moral reprobates, psychotic people who make up things about why I was fired from NYBG and then even change their story. Like in the last live stream, the story changed a little bit. I still challenge you to tell me who told you this, because nobody at NYBG knew me as Luis. 0 people knew me there as that. So, we'll see if that name ever comes out. And they also say I lied about the usher and I lied about the fireman. I didn't lie. I'm just relating stories that came to me through the years. I met this guy named the usher who it turns out was bullshitting me about knowing that Carr and Berkowitz knew each other. He was trolling me. And all I did was relate the story to the audience. I didn't say that I absolutely believed it. I was just telling the audience anecdotes from my life. The fireman story, for instance, which absolutely did happen. Why would I make that up? It does no good to make something like that up. But even that, I never said it was the absolute truth. I just was relating a story which had happened to me in the many years that I've been looking into and dealing. The fireman story was what got me onto Son of Sam, and that took place in 1993. So now we're talking about 32 years now, going on 33 years. Victoria and Brian believe he did Wendy. Certainly slots into a different profile to most serial killers. Yes, exactly. The non-touching serial killer, the one who wasn't really doing it as a sexual fetish, who didn't even particularly want to see his victims die. Like BTK, for instance. I'm watching a Netflix documentary with his daughter now on that, which is pretty good. Aileen Wuornos, I just watched that documentary about a week ago, which actually was kind of eye-opening to me because she didn't seem to be that bad a person. And I somewhat wonder what the circumstances of those killings were. Were these people trying to rape her and kill her, so she was killing in self-defense? There was one guy who she picked up, or who picked her up, who she was the nicest person to and didn't do any harm to. But then she said she lied about the rape that occurred to her by one of the victims. So again, it's like the non-binary aspect of these people. They don't just do one thing and that's it. What's up, Chital Patal? How you doing over here? This message held for review. View message. I think the weapons were his fetish, by Victoria. I'm going to show that one. I don't know if that's coming up. Another moderator just handled this. Cool, yeah. Again, that's that. We could talk about that. I don't really have any thoughts on that one way or the other, because getting into his mind is really, really difficult. I'd try to deal with his actions, because those we can discuss, and there's a historical record on those. And again, it all comes back to the binary nature of the David Berkowitz is bi. He did things in shootings that he didn't do in others. He wore clothes in shootings that he didn't wear in others. He had a hairstyle in Lomino Damasi that he didn't have in Loria and in Savino. He changed the details of his MO with every shooting. Yeah, they were similar, stranger shootings, but some of them were on a stoop, some of them were on a city street, some of them took place at 11, some of them took place at 7:30 in the evening, some of them took place at 2 in the morning. So how are you going to tell me that when you argue with me about Wendy, that he only did things a certain way and that he never smiled? How the fuck do you know that? You don't know that. He never smiled. Only his biggest characteristic of his entire being, his famous smile. But he never smiled at shootings. So Wendy's wrong. He didn't have a widow's peak. All right, so he didn't have a widow's peak. Who cares? Sketches aren't photographs. The sketch looks enough like him that it certainly doesn't take him out of the equation. If we had gone to Wendy and she showed us a sketch of a 6'7" black man with an afro and crooked teeth and a mole on his face, we would never even met her. But people with decades of forensic and police and investigatory experience were convinced by that sketch. So I don't care what some troglodyte from England has to say about it, or what Paul Berger Hart, don't understand why he uses fake names. I don't use fake names. I don't care what you have to say, Paul Berger. You're not dealing in honesty. You're dealing with your own agenda because you don't like me personally. And I get it. I don't like you guys personally. I wish I could do reaction videos on your stupid shit. But first of all, it's boring. And second of all, I like to talk about the case, not people and personalities. So, even though I like to go off a little bit on y'all, because you're such dumb and easy targets, I don't make your existence the central fact of mine, like you do with me. Going up a big ass hill, super out of breath. I'll show you. It doesn't look like it, but as we leave Vault Hill. So yeah, we're to believe that the 14-year-olds carried Karen Wallstrom's body this whole way. This is the way back to the Karen Wallstrom site from Vault Hill. It's the only trail that exists. How are you going to carry a body up these hills if you're 14 years old? We're not even anywhere near there, and I've been walking for quite a while. So, anyway. So it's fun to come up with these little topics. In the old days, people used to argue through letters to the editor or letters to each other back in the old classical days. So today we all fight each other with reaction videos. And whereas these idiots' reaction videos just make fun of me without actually providing any proof, forensic or otherwise, I like to get into the more philosophical issues of what these people bring up. And so these people are talking about Berkowitz never smiled. Berkowitz didn't have a 32. Berkowitz didn't have a widow's peak. He didn't have a leather jacket. So that automatically discounts him for committing a crime. When I've just laid out the argument that Berkowitz was not binary, I mean singular, he was binary. He did things in different ways at different times. Just because he ran from one doesn't mean he didn't walk at another. I mean, this should be fairly elemental to understand for people. Victoria and the Brian Kitty says, visited the Last Resort biker bar and the guy who runs it claimed the girlfriend had more to do with it. Yeah, you know, that's an interesting thought. Because Warnos was all about protecting her, the girlfriend, and making sure she didn't get in trouble. I thought Warnos was actually, I mean, I hate to say it, because she definitely killed people, but whereas Berkowitz was not sympathetic, I found Warnos to be like a little girl, like a sad and pathetic child. And I'm not prepared to talk any more about it because I really don't know about that case at all. But just from that documentary, it does leave reasonable doubt as to whether or not she was a serial killer or whether she was acting in self-defense. But getting back to the whole issue of Berkowitz's other bodies, yes, I believe, of course, that he was the Bronx sniper. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Again, it just fits within his profile. The cops themselves, if you read the newspaper articles, thought it was a teenager doing it. Berkowitz was 17 at the time. It was in the exact neighborhood that he knew like the back of his hand. He was there that summer. He did later on have a .22 rifle, exact one that could be disassembled. It wasn't the same one the Bronx sniper used. I want to make sure that people understand that. But why did he have that weapon of all weapons? The exact weapon, type of weapon that the Bronx sniper used, Berkowitz had in his possession when he was arrested. Wasn't the same one. Let's get that clear. For the troglodytes who don't understand what I say, even though I speak very clearly. But it is interesting that it was the same type of weapon. And it was also a spree. It took place at night. And perpetrator was never found. And even the reportage from the time was very, very similar to the Son of Sam reporting. Neighborhood under siege, as opposed to a city under siege. People not understanding who was doing this, why someone was coming in and doing this. He was generally targeting females. So I believe that with my whole heart that Berkowitz was the Bronx sniper. Mike Lorenzo, the police, how would I characterize him? Savant, incredible thinker, super deep and intelligent person. He was the one that discovered that case and brought it to my attention. And I totally and 100% agree with him. I'll do a walk and talk on that neighborhood when I get my better equipment, because that deserves the non-shakiness. And then, of course, you have people who thought Berkowitz killed their family members, and I don't believe it. Thereby showing you that I don't believe Berkowitz did everything that he's blamed of. I'm not going to get into the details and say names, because otherwise the NYPD is going to have a million more FOIA requests from lunatics in Olathe, Kansas, who make it their life's work to just follow me around, whatever I do, and then write blogs about it, and then bother people with FOIA requests, never go anywhere, meaningless. But I have all of the police files from a case of a deceased person here in the Bronx who was in a VA hospital, and his family swore. They even wrote an affidavit to this and went to the police. His family swore that Berkowitz was at that VA hospital. This was before the Son of Sam shootings, a month or two before Wendy Savino. That he was at a VA hospital. He was the roommate of their family member, and that he assaulted the family member, which directly led to his death. And believe me, when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, another victim. But not only do I not believe that Berkowitz was at this VA hospital, I just simply don't believe, after reading the toxicology, after reading the autopsy reports, and reading personal correspondence by the family, which was very similar in tone to the crazies out in Olathe, Kansas, just absolutely maniacal writing, which made no sense. And you could just tell the person's extremely mentally ill just by the tone of their writing. Of course, in those days, they didn't have AI to generate blogs like the weirdo in Olathe, Kansas, who's obsessed with me. Will definitely write a blog now after this. You guys don't realize that I'm trolling you too. Sometimes I do these videos, even though they're important, but I do them just to see the reaction videos so I can have a little bit of entertainment. And that's all it is. It doesn't bother me or threaten me or make me worried. It's just not possible. But yeah, Victoria, I don't believe that Berkowitz did that. So therefore, I'm not even going to put that out into the public, because I just don't need another case out there associated with my name. Especially since I personally don't believe it was Berkowitz. See, I'm a fair guy, right? I don't blame Berkowitz for everything, for every death that occur in the Bronx as I'm accused of. I actually take each case by case and analyze it, and through the filter of knowing about this person's criminology, and I deem it Berkowitz or not in that regard. So let me just check the. We've gone for almost an hour. Really, just to summarize everything that I tried to make clear in this, which of course won't be made clear because the people that I'm trying to make this clear to, although I'm aiming this at the audience, which I know is very intelligent and gets it, I'm also trying to aim it to the people because they don't let me on their shows to have rational discussions about this. So I try to aim it at these people to try to talk sense into them. It's like beating your head against the wall. It doesn't hurt anybody except yourself. It's like pointless. But the point that I'm trying to make is that you can't make the arguments that they're making against the Wendy Savino case. Oh man, he's not confident in the Savino. Yes, I'm confident in the Savino case. And yes, I don't care if you believe it or not. But it's obviously a case that people are up in arms about. It got attached to the Son of Sam crimes. Berkowitz went absolutely apoplectic that he was discovered about this case. He thought it was going to remain a secret the rest of his life. His friends went absolutely nuts trying to confront Wendy about it. This is a public case. I'm allowed to talk about it, and I'm allowed to make the arguments for it, even though I'm very confident about the end result. You can't say that Berkowitz didn't have a 32 because he didn't use a 32 in the quote unquote Son of Sam spree, the one that started in July to August. You can't make that argument. It doesn't make logical sense. He could have had a 32. There were plenty of opportunities to get it. It was New York City, 1976. He was IBI security. He was a cab driver. He was in this milieu where he was around guns. He was living in bad neighborhoods. He could have had a gun from his time in the army because we have his writing about all the pistols he could buy. We know he had many guns when he got busted. Just because he doesn't have the 32 meant nothing. If Wendy was his first crime, he probably freaked the F out. Got rid of the weapon, shot down to Texas in May to get out of town because he was nervous about it. Again, I'm just speculating there. But you can't say he didn't have a leather jacket because no leather jacket was found. You have his friend talking about a leather jacket. And I have to give Cracklin' Rosie the credit for that. She's the one that found that. Even though I don't think she likes me very much. That's fine. Rosie, you did a good job on, and I don't even think she believes Wendy either. That's fine too. Again, I don't care. She was the one that found the Comparetto thing with him. He's saying, in fact, I had a nice leather jacket that I lent to him that I never got back. He says he thinks his father threw it out. So he thinks his father threw it out. So that doesn't mean his father threw it out. That could be another example of Berkie bullshitting. Just because Berkie bullshits in one case doesn't mean that he's not telling the truth in others. Again, that's binary, that's singular thinking. In the singularist mind, Berkie only tells the truth or he lies. He doesn't do both. When we have evidence that he does both, even with Caporelli in 2023, or whenever that was, he lies and tells the truth in the same paragraph. He says, I did all the shootings alone, and we know that's true because, again, of the forensics, of the NYPD reports, the confession, the ballistics, the sketches, more importantly, the descriptions, which are all 5'8" to 5'9", 160 to 180 pounds. People don't understand that I've changed my mind on the sketches, mainly because of the descriptions, not necessarily because of the sketches, but because of the descriptions. And also people don't understand that this has been a journey for me. I started out as a Maury Terry fan, and now I'm not. I'm allowed to be binary and change my mind when new evidence comes in. So he tells Caporelli the truth in one regard, and in the same sentence he says he was hanging out with Gaj Dusek as Moloch in Undermeyer Park, and he was hanging out with two brothers. There's no evidence of that. So Berkowitz can lie in one sentence and tell the truth in another sentence. So therefore, him saying that he didn't do Wendy Savino means nothing. He's not giving that up because I discovered it with Mike Lorenzo, but mainly because my name is attached. He doesn't know Mike Lorenzo as much as he knows me. Berkowitz is obsessed with Manny Grossman. I know that for a fact. I'm not proud of it. I'm not gloating about it. It's just that I'm the person who he has chosen, just like he was obsessed with Klausner and the Abrahamson letters. I'm the new Klausner to David Berkowitz. The dude is veritably obsessed. He has no clue really who anybody else is out there in the Son of Sam world. So that's another reason why he's not copping to this. And you could take that to the bank. So I don't really have anything more to say other than try to be more nuanced in your approach to these crimes. Realize that Berkowitz can tell the truth in one sentence and not tell the truth in others. Realize that just because he did a crime like Lomino Damasi in some way doesn't mean that he did it the same way in every other crime. Basically what I'm saying is realize that David Berkowitz, at the end of the day, guys, is bi. All right, we'll see you another time.